94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's 6 minutes after 7 o'clock and into the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation on this fourth day of March. Getting into it properly this morning. And just to remind you that we say thank you for joining us every day here on the Situation Room for conversations that move the nation, the region, and indeed the world. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. And as we do that today, we're going to be getting into a conversation around a legacy of grassroots empowerment. To empower the people at the places where it matters has been the journey of many an individual and indeed many an organization and community. So we'll be having that conversation today. CT, last week you were waving your diamond wand. Today you're now just dropping some nuggets of diamonds, aren't you?
There's a little detail about precious stones. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're precious is because human beings have decided they're precious.
Yeah.
In the absence of that, it's just a stone. Probably a shiny stone.
Yeah.
Or a shiny piece of mineral. But houses aren't minerals. Houses represent some of the stablest form of wealth that anybody could have. So when someone offers you the opportunity to buy a house via mortgage, it's something that is worth listening to. And that's exactly what Diamond Trust Bank is doing. They're saying, we have a mortgage plan for you. It doesn't matter whether you are in paid employment, whether you've employed yourself, or even whether you're in the diaspora. They're saying they can offer you a 10-year mortgage at 9%. They can offer you a 25-year mortgage at 9.75%. They're taking it further and saying, we don't have hidden charges. I know financial institutions are often accused of having hidden charges, saying we do not. What we tell you you will pay is precisely it. That 9% doesn't change. The 9.7% doesn't change. They're also saying if you pay ahead of the schedule, should and when, if you do get a mortgage, we will not penalize you. And they're saying to do what needs to be done requires two things. Either walk physically to any Diamond Trust Bank branch or simply send an email, mortgages@dtbafrica.com.
Beautiful stuff.
Yes.
And there's a way to do it and there's a way to go about it. As we get into conversations for this hour, two ladies join us today. And when we talk about connecting folks at the community level, down at the grassroots, a lot of the things that we talk about up here, top level, and we say policies must be entrenched and things must be done, but we often don't think about the very person who connects the dots. And two ladies join us this morning in the persons of Esther Mwaura Moiru, who is the founder of Roots Kenya, and Alice Isoi, who is a land rights champion and county coordinator for Kakamega County. Ladies, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Karibu sana. I mean,
Asante.
obviously not the first time that we've had Roots in the room. We've been here and we've been talking about the connections that you've been able to make for people around the country. So thank you for being here today. And as we look into that and what's necessary to happen, Karibu sana. CT is going to welcome you with today's proverb, as we do here. And so we like to put people to work, very early in the morning. So he'll tell us what the proverb is. Then both of you will tell us what you think about the proverb and how you would interpret that. Yes?
There's a country in West Africa that has had the misfortune of having one coup after another. Well, it's not like every other day, but every couple of years they have a coup attempt and they have a military leader. That country is called Burkina Faso, and what is of interest is that country is actually called, Burkina Faso means the land of honest people. The name is derived from two ethnic communities. One is called the More, M-O-O-R-E. In English, you'd say More, but it's African, it's More. And the other one, Faso, is from the community called the Dioula. These are communities within Burkina Faso that are populous. So prior to this country being renamed and called Burkina Faso by the president then, Thomas Sankara, it had a name. I will not ask you what the name was. I will tell you. It's called Upper Volta. You've all heard of Upper Volta?
Yes.
Okay. Now, among the things that this particular president did, he outlawed the marrying of young children. He outlawed FGM. He outlawed forced marriages outlawed. What I'm about to say is my all-time favorite because I wondered how he implemented it. And he outlawed polygamy. How he managed to keep it outlawed, I don't know. But in 1987, he was assassinated. Now, let me mention the proverb. If the shade does not reach the goat will seek the shade. Simple, straightforward proverb.
If the shade does not reach the goat will reach the shade.
Will seek the
Will
shade.
seek
Yes.
the shade.
Yes.
Well, I think we have a Kiswahili saying like that. Is it tumu? I mean, it is whoever has the need is the one that sorts what are the solutions to their needs.
Is it mpenda mtakachamvugurisha tena?
That's it. That's how I would interpret it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Alice?
I think as my brother says, we say mgongo, taka mgongo kama kimeanguka chini, wewe ni kuinama na kuiokota. Yes, it's you to pick it from down because it's you seeing and it has dropped down. No one will pick it for you. So you'll use your back and pick it. Yes.
You both understood the proverb well. Yes.
Fantastic.
And thank you for your responses.
Indeed.
The beauty of the questions we ask is your interpretation can't be wrong.
Right.
Because it is your interpretation. Yes. But you've done an excellent job of interpreting it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very lovely to have both of you here this morning. And, in addition to that, it's really looking into the connections that have been made around the country for the longest time and the importance. So, I mean, grassroots organizations operating together for sisterhood. That's what Roots is. And we see that the work that's happening, I mean, we've talked about work that happens in Nairobi, Kiambu, Kisumu, Kakamega, in the coast. And it's really connecting people at that level towards opportunities and also towards the realities of what's going on. So walk us through that journey in terms of, starting off with you, Esther. Walk us through that, why it is important to touch at the grassroots for some of the things that we talk of, at other levels.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'd like to start why Roots and what is its relevance with today's context. So as you know, this year the world is celebrating the 30 years since we put together the Beijing Platform for Action, which is an action plan, agenda to empower women and to deal with women human rights that was done in UN conference in 1995, popularly known as the Beijing Conference.
Yeah.
So Beijing Conference happened 30 years ago. In the past, it used to be every 10 years, there is a women conference that would happen. But we haven't seen another UN conference on women happen since the Beijing conference. Why? Because the world believes that the Beijing Platform for Action, it is the best document we've ever written, that if it was implemented, it would actually deal with a lot of almost all the things we talk about gender inequality. But so the women's rights organization globally have refused to reopen the discussion for the Beijing Platform for Action. Because it means if 10 years after 1995, you have another conference, you reopen that and rewrite a new document. So that's why we've not had any other conference. But tells you how significant that conference was. And I happened to have gone to that conference when I was barely 25 years old. And I was there because I was very, very active in my university years, and I would be an assistant data collector for professors. I was doing sociology and economics, so I knew a lot of teachers who were doing researches. And I came from very, very, very poor background. And so for me, I had understood schooled how to earn my living. So for me, that was good, but also gave me something to educate my siblings, to do what was necessary for my life. And so I was able to understand there was this conference that was upcoming. And in 1994, there was a big conference of women from all over the country at Nairobi University. That time I had already finished university. I was working for the Urban Development Department, and I was working for a Dutch organization. And we were doing a lot of training using video clips. And I asked my boss, because remember I am attached to University of Nairobi, went to school, so I know my professors. I'm supporting part of the work going to Beijing, women preparing. And I asked my boss, can I use, those television tubes that we used to have, the big ones, can I use them and bring to the university so that as the women have finished their discussion, I can put up the clip for them to watch? And so that's how I got to know that Beijing was happening. So I brought this, my boss allowed me to bring this, and I would also participate. And then I was given the work to take notes by the women, because they were, KYM, the free work.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of voluntary work. And by the end of that meeting, they had found a good tool to take to Beijing. So I went to Beijing, China, and I was going to support the women that was going to Beijing with just really voluntary work, clerical work. And when I was there, remember I said I come from a very poor background.
Right.
And I come from a very poor village. And for me, it was shocking to find at the heart of where the NGOs were convening a tent where there would be the likes of my mother, the likes of my neighbors, talking about development issues. And I was fascinated. And any minute I would get my time, I would rush to this tent. And this is where I understood there was an organization called Groots International that had been started in 1985. And so immediately I came back here, I said, oh my God, I'm so surprised by this thing. I want also to build the capacity of women from my village and from the community so that they can speak for themselves and travel to such conferences.
Right.
Because truth be told is that in the main conferences, these women were not there. They were only in this tent. And the people who would speak about lack of water, no toilets, gender-based violence,
They didn't really get it, huh?
they were not the people who were suffering. The people who have these issues were in the tent. And this, for me, this disconnect was so clear from my lived experience. And I really came inspired that I wanted to build the capacity of grassroots women in this country who would also be engaging with development with clarity. Yeah, so that's how Groots Kenya was founded.
So when you talk about building and empowering women at the grassroots level, we're talking about, when we hear grassroots, obviously, excuse me, we're not talking about the folks who are sitting in the hoity-toity office somewhere. We're talking about at that level where you talk about some of the things without access to sanitation, without access to capital, without access to food regularly. So when you talk about empowerment, what are we talking about? Going around and handing out food rations? Putting up a mobile toilet? What are we saying?
So first of all is giving the voice, the agency, and the leadership to these women who are already experienced this situation of the lack, or the things you've talked about. Women who more often than not, we kind of think they are beneficiaries of the work we do. But they're actually active participants who are contributing with resources. So it's making sure, first of all, they are engaged and they are able to become part of the discussions and they are able to bring the solutions. The second thing is making sure they can envision the change that they want. And the third thing is making sure that they are able to understand who they are as right holders and understand who are the duty bearers and are able to drive demand for responsibility from the duty bearers, so that whatever they do for themselves and their communities is also to complement what the duty bearers should be able to do. And that these women are not working in isolation, that they are connected. It's not about mobilizing women. It's about investing in organizing women so that they are connected, so that they are sharing the experiences, they are sharing the solutions. They are going to talk to their governors, their members of parliament, not as one, but as a collective, but people who do understand where they are coming from and they have a vision of where they want to go. So for us, that is the whole realm of empowerment.
Do you know you have actually just defined something that has proven to be extremely elusive in terms of realizing it in the world of development. Everyone you talk to who is in that sector talks about empowering, they talk about grassroots, they talk about commonality of purpose, they talk about speaking in one voice.
Mobilization.
Yes, they talk about sensitizing, they talk
Capacity
about
building.
capacity building, they talk about educating. Lovely, delightful words. But if the length of time we've heard these words being spoken,
Yes.
and if indeed these words were meant to be impactful, then the changes that we hear in words should have been monumental.
Absolutely.
It's not that there are no changes. Now, because I personally have interacted with what Groots does, not in the studio, in the field. So I was amazed that everything, and this is why I'm making the comment I'm making, I was amazed that this thing that is elusive had actually been cracked. Because I found conversations were being had with young women, school-going young women, young mothers who had dropped out of school. And you're talking about people in the villages. Now, my question, how far spread is this gospel that you have preached and which has taken root, and how impactful has it been, and how does one measure this impact?
Well, I think for us, measuring impact is the transformation in the lives of women. I was in Groots for 22 years as the executive director, and I left 2017. So I am still the strategic advisor for the organization. I'm here because today there is a big meeting that is going to be happening in Duberry Stadium, where there'll be about 500 grassroots women from 22 counties here in this country celebrating what Groots has been to them for the last 30 years. So first of all, that tells you the reach. We are solidly in 22 counties. What does that mean? That if you go to that county, you will find at least the governor or the deputy governor knows there is an organization called Groots Kenya. That you will go to those these counties, and you'll find not less than 100 women, the likes of Alice, who, when we started working with Alice, even constructing a word in English, and she's not stupid. She has so much wisdom, but because the way development and the way the marginalizations happen, they are segregated to a corner that they don't interact with what we call development. But when you start bringing them into the forefront, they first of all realizing, unleashing their own potential to make sure they they first of all understand what vision of change that they want. So they first of all understand, how do I add my own personal poverty? One thing I tell the women, because I have lived in poverty, I told you that I always say that if you want to glorify poverty, you will never be my friend. I have lived enough of it. And so I ran away from it. So first and foremost is getting women out of poverty.
Right.
The second thing is making sure that they can claim and drive demand, so that they can go to the member of parliament and say that you actually commissioned this road. This was the quality, but we have not gotten this quality. And this is and they can understand what the quality. They can go to a community and do a comprehensive mapping of what was adjudicated as public land for market, for schools in 1963. And they are able to go to the Survey of Kenya and demand for that map. They are able to go to the county government and demand for that map and really construct the history of the public land in their community and say, why do we have this church inside the primary school? It wasn't supposed to be. This is how it was constructed, and say, okay, so that's why we're not having enough space. So this is why we cannot actually get the road recarpeted, because all of you have encroached the road. We are bringing to you the map. So look this map. Look at this map. This is why we are getting the river flooding, because we can map the riparian river path from the high levels of the land to the lower levels of land, and we can say who is within the given 50 meters away from the river. And they don't have to go and tell the chief, can you tell people to move? They'll bring the communities together. They will talk to them about the disaster of cultivating inside the river, and they will give each other the time frame to be able to move away from the river riparian. So it's a question of how do they work, and if people don't move, then they use authority because they have the capacity to negotiate. Yes.
And it's actually beautiful how you're articulating this, having given us your story from where you came from to who you have become now. The how is my question. Culture can work against or for you, and giving them a voice is a very good thing. But how is culture working with you in that regard? Because I'm sure you're talking about 22 counties. So all these women are in different setups, right? How is that working for you?
First, let's say that part of our culture and majority of our cultures are very, very good.
Okay.
Many years ago, 2004, when the HIV was very big in this country, and we started to see women being driven out of their homes because men said, you brought the HIV and AIDS to our brother, and our brother died, so move away. And it was so rampant. The girl children, the orphans were being thrown out. And we asked ourselves, what is this about women being driven out? Is it truly our culture that actually land belongs to men? Is it truly our culture that a man can just bring a woman in the home just because this woman now is worn out for the burden of work that she's been done, and she doesn't look as beautiful as she always looked? Is it possible? Is it that our culture? And we brought 9 cultural leaders in a room for 2 months. The Luyas, the Kikuyus, the Masais, the Borans, the Kabas, the Luos. There were 9 for 2 months. Together with, that time it used to be called, I think it was Feminate. No, it had become
UN Women.
Did I hear the Kikuyu?
The Kikuyus, yes.
I thought
yes.
I didn't hear them. I was
They
wondering
were there.
how.
They were there. And we started asking ourselves, what does our culture speak to when it comes to polygamy?
All right.
And we understood fast, no man in those communities would ever dare go hunt for a second wife for himself. None. The hunting was done by the wife.
The woman.
The woman.
Yeah.
And understanding that, yes, my husband, now I have such, like, the burden is too much on me. I have 3 children. I have to take care of the children. The lad is big. You're a wealthy man. You have many kettles. Maybe I would need somebody.
To help
And it's
me.
this woman who would actually go scavenging for who she wants to be a core wife.
So she was not going to look for another woman to share the love with her husband.
No.
She was going to look for another woman to share the burden
To share
with.
partly, of course. But of course, the truth is that she gets to be married. And so, but what I'm trying to say, it's not like where now men come to Nairobi.
Okay.
They move out of the village.
Right.
They take a new young woman.
Correct.
They live with her in the city. And then they go and show up in the village with this woman. It's different. This woman understood the level of resources that the family owned. And she had control. This is the point I was making. She had control of the resources that the man owned.
Right.
And she knew what is the share, and they shared very nicely. That's why when I grew up, I found my grandmother very happy with the co-wife. They were always together, never left each other. They were good friends. But now we don't have it.
They knew what they were
Because
doing
it's
then.
not facilitated.
Let's look very quickly, and then we're going to take a break and we'll come back and continue. But Esther, it's just interesting to get some of those insights.
Yeah.
Alice, now, because now you are right there. You're at the ground and you're seeing what are some of these issues that you deal with that need, we're going to use those big words again, that need empowerment, that need capacity building, that need mobilization. What are the issues that you see women dealing with that you've now been able to, coordinate for them to start to get out of?
Yes, in the communities we have the women, most women are being affected with land rights, disinheritance, and then we also have a problem of GBV, gender-based violence.
Okay.
These are the issues that are affecting the grassroots women. But we were seeing when, for example, Esther had touched about when your husband dies, you are disinherited. During the time of HIV and AIDS, when a man dies, this woman is supposed to leave that home. And when Esther came with that knowledge, our work was to see that we make dialogues. We had what we call the watchdog groups. The watchdog groups was formed to oversee the issues, the rampant issues of the disinherited women. And the communities were looking only at land, because when your husband dies, the community or the relatives looks at the land, they sell the land, and then you are disinherited, even the whole property. So we formed watchdog groups. These watchdog groups was combined of the village elder, the chief, the two grassroots women. When they form that group, this is the group that is going to help in addressing these issues. So the grassroots women, what we did was to see that this woman remains in her home, because when she goes out of that home, she will go and rent in a shop. When she rents in shops, the same family, they will go for her as a friend. So you will see that HIV and AIDS is being spread more than, in fact, what it was. So some of the issues is to see that this woman, we make the follow-up of the land. We used to take the problem or the issues. First of all, if the community will not address the issue, we make sure that we take the case ahead in courts. And when they go to courts, when we take this case, because this woman was lacking the guideline, where is she supposed to go? So we lead her in court to go to legal rights. And then what we used to do is to see that these other grassroots women, we follow her even up to in court, so that when this case starts, the women are there standing with this woman.
Sure.
And then the magistrate will look at that and see there is something going on. So we made it very powerful in that when she comes in, we all enter that court. When she goes out, we are moving out, but now we shall go back also to ask in a place where we want to know, this case is taking too long.
All right.
And this woman is the right woman of this land. So we want her to own her land.
Yes,
her
to
land.
own her
So
land.
that's part of the issue, and that's why we have women land rights. And we still address those issues. The only challenge is that the cases take too long
Okay.
in courts.
Okay.
But most women as he had talked, that how do you know that you are doing the work? We map the lands and the women that are being affected, and because they know the moment they have to reach us. Some reach us and some we reach them.
All right. Okay.
That's how we address our issues. Yes.
All right. This morning we're talking with Esther Mwaura Moiro as the founder of Roots Kenya, as well as Alice Isoyi, who's a land rights champion and county coordinator in Kakamega County. And we're looking at, those issues at the grassroots that have connected women over the last many years, over the last 30 years. And we'll take a break and come back and look at, are we still seeing the same issues that affected women 30 years ago, still affecting them today? It's 24 minutes to 8 o'clock. We continue with this conversation right after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
Enjoy Rina vegetable oil 5 liters at 1,099 shillings. Meta Clear multi-purpose soap 1 kg at 111 shillings. Brookside Dairy Best 500 ml at 49 shillings. Mika Fridge 112 liters at 24,495 shillings. And LG 55-inch TV at 64,995 shillings.
Deals kibao kila wiki na Carrefour.
Just confirmed that 2 of the remains belong to Noel Jonicio and Lydia Miliado.
Where's my mother? Why wasn't she there?
You're just a lapdog. That's your only role in that stupid family. Their lackey, the one who cleans up their mess. Or you're protecting that family of sickos anyway.
Should the police prove those people didn't steal anything, the witnesses would be in trouble.
They're all innocent, those 4 who work for the Fieros. That's what Aries told me back then.
Did he find any evidence that would prove that statement?
Sawa ndio nakwambianga masafara. Ukikunja huku unapatana sasa na masafara wa Urambaru unaona. Hao ndio watu utakula ka snack hivi kabla tukakule hizi ni snacks. Sasa ni snacks alafu ndio tukakule sasa nyama huko mbele.
Mali ni nyingi nyumbani. Kipi kiko kimbisaka? Mali. Huyo msaidia aliimba.
Bali mzee. Mimi sio mzee, mimi ni mheshimiwa Rwaka. Kwani mjui ni MP wetu? Ni ulishaguliwa? Ni mimi niliingia. Mimi nilienda Narok. Niliingia na majority mimi. Si nominated. Hapana.
The things that you talk about was that, there are issues of, not having proper sanitation and how it affected women, not having access to your land rights in the case that your beloved, had passed on. You don't have access to capital to start a business and not able to take your children to school. Those were issues that affect everybody, but then affected women at a great scale. Today in 2025, are we looking at the same issues that were there that took women to Beijing in 1995?
They manifest differently. Issues manifest differently. If you think when we were going to Beijing, China, it was very unlikely you would find women in the community that understand how policies are formulated in this country. And we do know how policies are formulated, and a lot of many community leaders do know now, from planning to budgeting to the entire budget cycle, because it's an investment we've done. But unfortunately, the problem is corruption. We have significant corruption that has made it almost impossible to make gain of the investments that we are making. And I think that is how the things have mutated. Before, you wouldn't have a woman who've not gone to school come back to school, go up to Form 4. She dropped in Classic, go to Form 4, and is able to become a chief. Now we do have them who are members of the administration in the government. At least Groots Kenya has hundreds of them that have been appointed and employed as chiefs in this country. I think the problem is that also in the sense when we were going to study sociology, economics in the university, we'd been taught about this is where you go to provide service to the people. It was like being a nun. I remember because I went to Catholic school. We were oriented, if you wanted to do community development, it's closer to being a nun, where you're serving the community. We've so much professionalized the work that it is what he was saying, big words, and many of the people go to school so that it can be employed by the NGOs because that is where money is. And that alone has been very difficult to orient the people coming to the industry in many times. What does transformation mean? So it's harder work to get people who are coming from university to actually work with the likes of Alice from point A and work with them to point Z or to point P.
Why is it difficult?
Because I think the way our system of education has mutated is that people are going just to study to get money. You're not inspired to go and change lives.
Let me pause you for a second. Before we get educated, we belong to families.
Yes.
And most of the learning that takes place, non-formal, is in our homes. Are we saying that the foundation that is laid in our homes are so fragile that the education system that we then encounter completely obliterates it so that the value systems that people are taught? Or are we saying that we no longer teach value systems in the homes that children belong to?
I think you have to also understand how the education system in Kenya has changed. Before, when I went to school, some of us who went up to Form 6, all of us who it didn't matter which village you came from, you had an opportunity to go to university. Today, after the academies, we already had a big divide. So those communities where you're saying we were oriented about working with poverty, there was a big group of people that didn't come, that were part of the poverty, that were edged out of the education in this country because they were not part of the academic school. There was a group that lost that. So the people who understood these things you're talking about, they didn't go to school. Then you have these our own children, my own children, who are brought up in the academy school. They're the ones who have the opportunity to go. They've never interacted with poverty. And then you are sending them to Kakamega to work with Aris, and they are not oriented to, that is what has helped them to go to school, and why they want to go to school is because they are pursuing unemployment. It's not because they are pursuing a change that they have experienced. It's a whole different sector now.
I hear you to be confessing and saying that our social system has collapsed.
Completely.
Because
completely.
We didn't have academies because I was of that older group that went to Form 5 and 6. Where jobs would look for you after Form 2, Form 4. University, some of us, I had a letter where I was supposed to work before I finished my exams. I say this because there was a time when children were inducted into the rural homes that their parents came from. You may live in town, but literally every holiday you were at home. So you never really lost touch with where your roots were. So we are saying that in this modern time, that isn't the case. So the disconnect has continued to grow. Because even if you are in some, as Ndu likes putting, some hoity-toity school, where you speak English through your nose, you are inducted into the rural life, or you will not escape it. Because you will understand with great intimacy. Because when you go to the rural, like, what do? You live the way other people live.
You're not going to import some.
No, you will do exactly what everybody else does. One. Two, you'll speak the language of that community.
Yes.
Now.
But as this was changing, remember, poverty is growing. So a critical mass of people are living in poverty, and they've been edged out.
Actually, what you say is true, but it connects with what I'm saying. The socialization that we speak of endeared one into understanding that you needed to look after your parents and you needed to look after your relatives. You needed to. So the moment that changed, then what you're saying became a reality.
So then, I mean, Alice, you see, you interact with these situations every day, one would assume, right? What are we looking at in terms of a situation that we are saying that people are still going through today that needs attention?
I think these issues, can you repeat the question?
What are the problems that people are still facing today?
Problems that are still there are the gender-based violence.
Those are the two now that you had mentioned before.
Yes.
Okay.
People still have a challenge in implementation of policies. Number two, the way the duty bearers or the office of the where we need to take our cases. For example, in the police. Even though we work with them, but now you find out that there are times you can take a child who has been defiled, they need a P3, or a woman who has been raped, they say you have to pay some money. And now when you are there with this policeman, when they need money so that they give you a P3, and you don't have the money, you are just passionate to see that you take this lady who has been raped to go for treatment. So you are following the right channels. So when you reach that, because in the health facility, they will tell you to go for P3 because the doctor will need to write in that P3. This police says a P3 is, the payment is 1,000. Maybe you have had 3 women who have these cases. Now, where do I get money?
3,000.
Me, the 3,000. Now we stand and look at each other with the person, with the papa. With the survivor. The survivor has nothing. If yesterday I got some little money, we make it and we sacrifice. We are passionate about it. But then you see, it will take time for me maybe to, when I call another responder, she might say, Alice, I have only 300. Now, you see, we now do something like fundraising to see that this woman gets that, the P3, I take her to the health facility so that this issue can now be addressed before the perpetrator is arrested.
You see, Alice, and I think this is a very timely conversation, by the way. On the 7th of March is a Women's International Day, but but I laughed because City seated right next to you and pointing at him, that was a bit funny. But now let's talk about this. You talked about the justice system, let alone the police. There's a procedure to it. And I'm very, very particularly curious on your legal representation. Because you say when the woman gets into the court, you walk in with her in support when she goes out. But how is your legal representation? Is it pro bono representation? Are there firms like the, Feeder Women? Who stands with you in legal representation? Is it pro bono? Where do you get the finances to stand with these women?
We have the pro bono. We have Roots Kenya, who has who gave us a lady, a lawyer, who just support legal advice. You go like this, go like that, and she also could stand with us in court to see that these issues are also addressed. Yes. And the women themselves also support each other. We support each other.
All right.
To see that maybe our problem are reduced. Yes.
I think about some of these things sometimes, and I hear comments and I hear, opinions, Esther, and people say, well, okay, fine. You went to Beijing in 1995. You had a stab at this. I mean, for crying out loud, thousands of women came together, had a meeting and said, okay, we've got to move on from one place to the next. And we said, fine. But 30 years down the line, and even with interventions that have been made at national level, local level, community level, we still have situations whereby women who have been abused have to pay for a form that would be free, number one, have to look to raise money to sort out a situation that they did not bring onto themselves. And we still are asking the question today that, why are you women still making so much noise about this thing? See, we know you are equal. You are there. You bear children. You do. Why are we still making...
Who's asking the question?
There are many people who make comments that why do we still fight for equality? Everybody should just do what they need to do. Why do we still... why are you still fighting for these issues? You're making too much noise. We can understand that women are there, but you're there. We can see you, Alice. We can see you, Esther. We can see you. We can see that... Just keep quiet and continue. I know why we need to keep making noise, but I need to hear it from you that if 30 years down the line, that a woman who's been raped can go to a police station and somebody asks you to give money for a form that a doctor needs to fill to treat you, I say we're still in the pit.
Yeah, because we have not been able to focus on our priority in development. It is so easy anytime there is an issue that has risen to set up a commission. A commission is an institutional framework. It is so easy to set up a committee to develop a policy. And that is where we've concentrated. But we've not implemented what we have already. And there are reasons why we are not investing in implementation of what we've developed. And that's why we are not making progress. Because just like we were saying, the disconnect with our socialization and our education system, the political system nowadays is so far away from the people's issues. And the problem is that they know how to articulate these issues better than we do know how to articulate them. But they have no commitment and political will to actually implement policies and put the resources into the work that will deal with these issues. So you have these grassroots women on the ground who have formed all these community processes and community responses. And in a number of times they are working in isolation from critical political systems that should be supporting them. And we are not actually building on this, on what we know works. For example, I would say, when she talked about the community-led watchdog groups, the community-led watchdog groups, the best thing it did was actually to prevent disinheritance. What the people who are in the community watchdog groups would do is really have their feelers in the community and see in a family, because like we talked about socialization and having these connectivities among the family, you'd almost tell a family that is up to disinherit a woman before this is done. And so these community watchdog group members would go to actually the barrio committees and invited in the various committees in the village, and they would make sure that the woman was integrated in the discussion. That would make it almost impossible. But because the system at that time wasn't very supportive, it only ended up there. But luckily we had this justice, was it Mutunga, who came as the Chief Justice. Willie Mutunga. And he looked at this kind of practices, and that was why alternative dispute resolution mechanisms bought and drew from such processes. We contributed a lot in the development of the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms in this country, drawing from the work the community-led watchdog groups have done. And that is what I am saying, the implementing and drawing from the solutions that we've done. And then secondly is the land issues. We are very passionate about the land issues. Right now where I work, I'm the global women's, the global advocacy director for women's land rights. We are very, very, very passionate about. Because land is not only a productive asset. As women, it's our heritage. The minute you remove me from the land that I call this is where I belong, you have actually destroyed my heritage. So it's my heritage, and therefore I have to own it. But it's also a productive resources. So when I don't remember his name, he was the PS, and we were implementing the constitution, and we were setting up guidelines for setting up the lad boards, the community lad boards in the community. One of the criteria that the permanent secretary had written was that you must show you own land for you to be part of the community lad board. And the women on groups came to Nairobi to the Ministry of Land. And they told the PS, you are building a problem over another problem. First of all, we've been disinherited of our land. Land, we are not written in the titles. So you're telling us we cannot be part of the land board, and it had to be deleted. So there is a lot of progress we've made, but we've not been consistent. That's the problem. And the investment is going in the wrong way.
Esther, surely you have partners who help you with this work. I know, I started off by saying I know about Groots because one of your partners called Kellen.
Yes.
I used to consult for Kellen at some point, so I know what they did. Some of this work you can't do alone. So my question is, who are the partners who help Groots in areas like the technical, legal things? Well, I've mentioned Kellen, they do that because they do look at legal, ethical issues, and they are big on these inheritance things as well. What other groups do you associate with and do you partner with to see this?
So, all the women's rights rights organization in Kenya.
All.
We work with CRU. I hope you know CRU. We work a lot with CRU. We work a lot with Kellyn. We work a lot with the FIDA. FIDA has been our primary go-to person when it came to legal representation.
Right.
Yes. In fact, they would actually put a lawyer in places where we needed support. So and actually that's the beauty of the women movement, not just about groups. The women movement is so tight in this country in how they collaborate. People think that we compete, but we are very tight in how we collaborate. Right now, the work we are doing with the big work with the Mastercard Foundation, it is with several organizations. It's not just groups, but it's really supporting thousands of women in terms of responding to GBV. It is supporting a lot of women in terms and young people in terms of working on elevating young people and getting work. But for me, the civil society is not our primary partners. And that's the primary partner is the women. Once these women have been given even the paralegal training, because that is one big investment where we've done with like Legal Resource Foundation. Once you give them the legal foundation and empower them, then they're able to represent themselves.
So, coming together this week, in a very short time, this is Women's Week, and then culminating in International Women's Day. Women are coming together again to celebrate, 30 years of this work. What is that and where and how will that go through?
International Women's Day, we will celebrate the International Women's Day on the 7th it's actually on the 8th. 8th. But a lot of work will happen on the 7th because 8th is on a Saturday. But there is a lot to celebrate. And as women, and you said that one of the issues that we are struggling is because the same problems that we dealt with that are still reigning. But I would say we've made a lot of progress. Even just having UN Women as an entity from being uniform was a lot of work that was done, plus with the women in this country. Having at least, how many governors, women? Seven governors. That's so much progress. I know it is not yet even at that, but it's so much progress. Groots Kenya has something we call the Public Budget Academy. It has trained 22 people. In 22 countries, you have women that can participate and men. We have a big group called Men Champions for Women's Leadership.
Beautiful.
They are very, very strong, because when it comes to campaign, because Roots Kenya also interface with the political system, and we have what we call champions for transformative leadership, some of the women that are vying for political spaces, and men are very supportive. So we are celebrating what we have gained.
I mean, and it's great that we do, and now taking this time to commemorate that as well, but then hoping that the work that is done does continue. Esther Mwaura Moiru has been our guest this morning, the founder of Roots Kenya, as well as Alice Isoi, the land rights champion and county coordinator for Kakamega County. Thank you both for being here this morning. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and we continue these conversations into the future. Asante Sana. It's 8:01.